good. All right, well, welcome everybody to our morning Bible study. And we're studying the book of Proverbs. And if you have your book, it's lesson 10. Page over there. Which we're studying the sin of pride right now this morning. Okay, the sin of pride. All right. So the question is, what is pride? Now, you know, when I started studying this, it was one of those things. I'll just wipe while I'm talking here and everything. I got my fingers all over these glasses, and I can see about 2.5 feet right now. My own. But when I started studying this, I was thinking, you know, pride gets a bad rap most of the time because we only think of it on one side. And that can get us in trouble in many different ways. Anytime you take half the story, you can have a problem with that. So pride really is a two-sided coin. If you look at this list of synonyms right here, all the ones in green are the things that we associate with pride that is a good thing. That God provided this as part of our nature. And when you, like anything in God's creation, when it's used correctly, it has a great benefit, and we can benefit with the things that God has actually provided for us. But in red, the words there you can see that's the negative side, and that's the part that we're going to be focusing on today. But as we focus upon that, let us not forget the other side, because there is a balance that we need to find, and the scriptures help us to provide that balance and find that balance. I couldn't help but think of Matthew 22:36, where Jesus was asked the question, "Teacher, which commandment is the greatest in the law?" And Jesus declared 2 things: love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment, and the second is like it. Love your neighbor as yourself, or in the same way that you love yourself. That's the standard now for this. Love your neighbor in the same way. Okay, so that has to make us think a little bit about how is it that I should feel about myself. And that deals to a great extent with this idea, this characteristic of pride. And of course, I couldn't help but think of 2 John 1:9, which John writes, "Anyone who goes too far and does not remain in the teaching of Christ does not have God, and the one who remains in." And so when we're talking about pride tonight, we're talking about going too far, taking the idea of self-esteem and these things, self-respect, and going beyond that to arrogance and vanity and self-importance and all that. So what is the difference between sinful pride and a healthy self-respect? Let's get the discussion started right there, because we need to have some kind of idea. What is the difference in those two? Shirley, let's start with you and then over to Ken.
Well, sinful pride is thinking more highly of yourself than you should.
Okay.
And
Okay, go ahead.
respect. The other side of pride is you should have respect for your appearance, your home, your property, car, and all that.
Okay, so the part when you said more than you should, that should part is what gives us the problems. Okay, and but we have guidance for that, and we're going to be talking about that a little bit later. Ken?
I wrote down the sinful pride elevates one above others, but self-respect says, I am as good as others. In other words, you have enough self-esteem to realize that, you know, you're all on the same level with other people, but selfish pride can try to elevate you above others.
Okay, so now there's in talking that in that discussion in that way, you've you've added that idea of equality and balance to the structure there. And the equality and balance is on what level? And you said it in what you were talking about. What level are, in what level and in what way are we equal?
We're all created by God and have souls.
Okay, great. Okay, and so it's each other. God created us, all of us, in the same manner. We are each unique in that we each have a unique soul, right? But that's where the equality lies. Raising one above the other, when God had not intended that, that gets into the problem area there. And of course, placing ourselves above the level where we belong in relationship with God is a problem? It's a big problem, that's right. So that's a good way to start. Let's take a look at the things that the author wanted us to cover here. We're going to be talking about first why the misuse of pride is a sin. And I used that specifically and changed it a little bit the way the author had it in the book, because whether pride itself is a sin depends on how we use it. And so we're going to talk about the misuse of pride in this. And then, of course, pride is the avenue of temptation, what pride does, a lot of things associated with that. Pride leads to destruction. Pride is hated by God. And then finally, you can't talk about pride and not talk about King Herod in Acts chapter 12. So we're going to be doing that a little bit. So let's talk about why the misuse of pride. A couple of scriptures from Proverbs here that deal with this. Proverbs 21:4. Who wants to read that one? And if you want to read it right off here, you can do it. Jesse?
Haughty eyes and a proud heart, the lamp of the wicked is sin.
Okay, a definition here, right? Okay, how about Proverbs 30:13?
Oh, how lofty are his eyes, and his eyelids are raised in air.
Okay, all right. So when you think about what the proverb writer is writing here, okay, and he's dealing with this look, this idea of haughtiness and everything. Misusing the emotion of pride is a sign of corruption of the soul. It's a corruption of the soul. It's a corruption of the intent of God. But what is it a corruption of? What is being corrupted when you are displaying the characteristic of pride in the way it's being misused here for evil? What in you, if you are displaying this, is in evidence of being corrupted?
Since you're presenting yourself in a way that you are purposely causing someone to lust after.
Okay. Which is that's the action. So if that happened and you saw that in a person, you'd say, person is being prideful here and arrogant in a certain way, certainly maybe even evil intentions here. Something's been corrupted. This is fruit that is coming out. What has been corrupted? Your heart. That's right. Okay. Jesus, Matthew 7, verse 20. He was saying that which comes out of the person, that is what defiles the person. For from within, out of the hearts of people come, and then the list starts. And one of these things that we're talking about associated on the list is, of course, this idea down there in verse 22, next to the last, save the best for last. Pride, right there. And there it is. So as we take a look at that, we want to keep in mind, this is evidence, prideful activity, prideful characteristics in your life is fruit or evidence that there's corruption of your heart. And that should make us pause and then reflect and then act to try to solve that. Jesse?
A reference, in case people are confused, it's Mark, Matthew should be Mark.
Oh, it should be Mark 7 is when I started. Thank you for that. Appreciate it. Okay, so let's go on to this, the second point here, which is pride is an avenue of temptation. In what way is pride an avenue of temptation? This, you know what an avenue is, right? Here's the way, here's the invitation, here's, Jesse?
It's the big fish in the small pond mentality, right?
Okay.
You've been able to throw your weight around, or whatever your natural advantage may or may not be, that was given to you by God, okay, you've taken advantage of it, like Goliath. And, pride goes before the fall. But I think that's the idea, is that it allows you to seek your own advantage, whatever that might be, over another. But what's funny is you always forget that the pond leads to the stream, to the lakes, to the oceans, and there's always a bigger fish,
Right.
So it's a limited delusion, I guess, because the world's bigger than you.
So, and that's where the concern lies within, because this is something that's hidden. It's in your heart. It's hidden in your heart until it comes out, and then now the fruit is there. The problem with being a fruit checker is that the fruit's already rotten when you see it, right? Which means inside's already there's a problem in there. Sam?
Just like Jesus said that by loving others and loving your neighbors, by doing that, you could love Jesus in that way. By thinking yourself higher than your neighbors, you're thinking yourself higher than Him and God as well. And then once you're in a position where you believe you can make your own decisions better than what God can make for you, that opens the door to any sin you think of.
If you had to have an antonym for the opposite of pride, would be what? Humility. Okay, so we know how much Jesus dealt with the positive side of that aspect in demonstrating humility. Shan?
I just think of 1 John 4:4 a lot. I always have for a long time in my life, but you can tweak that respectively. Stronger is he that is in you than he that is in the world.
Nice.
And that just tweak it in, again, a respectful way. But that just reminds us too.
Very good. Very good. The author, we talked about 1 John 2:15, and do not love the world nor the things in the world. If anyone loves the world, the love of the Father is not in him. Which love is being talked about here? Phileo love, the emotional love, or agape love, the sacrificial love, gotcha. This is interesting. I found this interesting. This love that's here is the Greek word from the Greek word agape. Agapeo is what this is here, which in this reference, it's the sacrificial love. It's this giving love, the love that God has, but it's to show a preference for is the way it's translated, and that's why our English translators use this particular word here. And I couldn't help but think of Luke 12:34 here, when Jesus said, "For where your treasure is, there will your heart be also." And so I gotta think that we would be well to be reminded of the old worldly phrase, "Follow the money," or "Follow the treasure," in what Jesus is talking about here. But that is going to be true in our lives. If you follow the money, if you follow the value, the treasure of what somebody truly values, you're going to find out what's in their heart. And of course, ultimately, they're going to act on that. And if the action is the misuse of pride here, where you get that out of balance, it's going to be quite an issue. So, all right, so let's go on to the next one. What pride does, and we've got a whole list of these different things on there. So let's start with, how does Luke chapter 18, verses 9 through 14 expose the danger of religious pride. Let's go ahead and open up your Bibles to Luke 18, because this is a great illustration here. And the Holy Spirit provides this to the author Luke. Who wants to read in Luke 18, and I'm starting in verse 9. Luke 18, verse 9. Ken?
And read through 14.
Okay. And he also told this parable to some people who trusted in themselves that they were righteous and viewed others with contempt. 2 men went up into the temple to pray, one a Pharisee and the other a tax collector. The Pharisee stood and was praying this to himself: God, I thank you that I am not like other people, swindlers, unjust, adulterers, or even like this tax collector. I fast twice a week. I pay tithes of all that I get. But the tax collector, standing some distance away, was even unwilling to lift up his eyes to heaven, but was beating his breast, saying, God, be merciful to me, the sinner. I tell you, this man went down to his house justified rather than the other. For everyone who exalts himself will be humbled, but he who humbles himself will be exalted.
Okay, so here we have an example of religious pride as such. In this particular case, Jesus making a very powerful statement here and comparison on the how-to and the how-not-tos on this. But the question is, how does this expose the danger of religious pride? Did the Pharisee think he was doing anything wrong? We don't have an indication of him thinking that he was doing anything wrong.
Self and said, I've lived in all good conscience to this day. So you can think that you're doing everything right, actually.
Yes, exactly.
And so it gets back to that idea of fruit checking again. Can we adequately fruit check ourselves? Is it possible to fruit check yourself? Yes, and we should actually, right? And check it against what? What's our standard? Okay, Bill's holding it up. That's right. The scriptures are the standard. Okay, but sort of like a funhouse mirror, there are times when you could. You ever been in a fun house where I never thought as kids they were fun. They scared me, but you go in and it's dark in there and spooky things lie behind walls, and then you come into maybe the hall of mirrors, and there's these crazy mirrors, and you stand in front of one, you look like you're a toothpick, and the next one you look like whoa, the whale, and life is kind of like that for us. We have our filters that we put in here, and sometimes. You just look there and go, man, I look pretty good. Where you may just be standing in front of the skinny mirror, and it's just not, and you may have things just completely out of whack. So how important is it for us to have a group of people around us that will be honest with us and be able to take a sideways look for using the scriptures to help us? Does God provide anything for us that would be helpful in fruit checking? Eric is going, yes, right here. There are a number of things. So we're actually going to touch on that a little bit later, but I want you to think about that. God's provided a lot of things here for us. So how can we avoid the Pharisees' problem? Norm?
We need to remember, unlike the Pharisee, there is no degree of sin. If you tell a lie, no matter how small you think it is, no matter how whitewashed you think it is, you've done just as much as somebody who's murdered. It is equal in God's eyes. We have a really hard time remembering that the smallest thing is just as bad as the greatest thing, because we are the ones that put the degrees of small and great. God looks at all of it as the same. Any of it is disgusting, repulsive, and it will cause you to be ejected from his presence.
So there's a high standard here, and which is why when you're talking about making modifications to your character, which is what growth is, I mean, it's change, right? I am here, I check myself, I am not in alignment. Those of you that have built buildings, not me, but those that actually are talented at construction, you understand how important it is to get the line right when you're putting up a wall, so it doesn't look like that when you look down, and these are things that are there. They're not easy to do, but small things can make big differences. And like Norm says, there's no degree with God of difference back and forth. So, yeah. So we can avoid the Pharisees' problem by using these tools, and we'll talk about them in just a little bit. So, another thing that pride does, it dethrones God in one's heart. So, as we look at this, okay, I'm looking at this one and looking at that one at the same time. And it never happens to you, Jesse, right? It's okay. Let's keep talking about the Pharisees' problem here on this thing. And we talked about testing yourself. We talked about looking for the fruits and everything. Those are ways to be able to go about doing those things. But remember now, there's some action involved in this. What's the difference between looking at something and testing something? Okay, one thing you're looking at it, all right. Like I'm looking at right here at the Lord's Supper stuff, and I have not seen what's inside of that. It's got a cover on it. Now, knowing the good folks that put this together for us each Sunday, I'm going to make an assumption that there's fruit of the vine and unleavened bread in there in a certain order and everything. I don't know for sure if that's true unless I go over and I pick up that thing and look at it. The lights don't only, you don't know if they're going to come on until you flip the switch and come them on. That's called testing. And we need to do that in our life. We need to test if we're actually in Christ. And that's going to be the only way. And that's why Paul talks about this in Corinthians. And that's an important part of finding out what kind of character we have when we're dealing with pride. Sam, go ahead.
One touches on this with being a hearer of the word.
Go ahead and read that. James 1, starting in...
I'll say verse 22. But prove yourselves doers of the word and not merely hearers who delude themselves. For if anyone is a hearer of the word and not a doer, he is like a man who looks at his natural face in a mirror. For once he has looked at himself and gone away, he has immediately forgotten what kind of person he was.
Ooh, the mirror reference too is exactly what we're talking about here. And so yeah, and there's a reality to this that we need to keep in mind, that because we can get offended sometimes. Somebody comes up to us and say, hey, you're acting a little too big for your britches here right now, aren't you, fella there? How can you say that to me? I'm your friend, you can't talk to me like that. Or I'm your husband, or I'm your wife. But some testing has gone on, and there's some fruit that is there, and sometimes we need some help in being able to actually do that. But the testing is important, so we need to remember that. Okay, so now I'm going to go to the thing I was actually looking at here. So another thing that pride does, it causes one to exalt oneself. So the question that the author had here was, how does pride exalt a person, and how do we avoid that? How does pride exalt a person?
Of himself than he should.
Okay, we're back to Shirley's comment
originally here in Romans 12:3, not to think more highly of himself. So, all right, so the question is, how do we avoid this? How do we avoid the exalting? Is to not think more highly of yourself, but then what tools did God provide us? And this is where, again, I told you we get back to this. Look at all these tools, and this is not the end of the list. This is a short list. This is the short list. Tools that God in his creation has provided to help us to be able to test our fruits, to be able to correct our problems, put out the fertilizer, for the trees, and do all that kind of stuff. And it all rolls around to the fact that God loves us. And if we will remember that we don't have to be going through life on autopilot, I was good yesterday, so I'll just keep doing what I was doing. Okay, well, there may be a turn in your life in the road next, and you may need to make an adjustment. And there are tools available to help us stay on the road. Enough of the examples, okay? There's like 3 of them in a row there. But we need to take advantage. The key is to take advantage of the tools that God has provided for us. Okay, another thing that pride does, it leads to an attitude of superiority towards others. So how would you describe a proud look? Somebody give me a proud look. I'm going to look through the audience here and see. That's a smile. That's not it. Give me a proud look. Come on. Oh, there we go. Gil's got one. All right. Hey, Gil, when you're in that stance, if you were walking along in that stance, how long would it be before you say fell in a pothole? If you were in New York City, it'd be about 3 feet.
Focus on yourself, not around you. So pretty quick.
Yeah, pretty quick. The looking up thing, we talk about looking up as far as our goals and our inclinations, leaning towards God. That is different than looking up like this. Because all that going through life with that kind of a character, where you just have your nose a little bit higher than you ever seen 2 kids stand next to each other, and they'll kind of look out the side of their eyes, and then all of a sudden they're standing up just a little bit taller, and maybe get on the toes a little bit, and then now they're both doing it, and it's human nature to be competitive with each other. But we tend to do things that kind of give little hints about what our heart is thinking. So how could this attitude of superiority develop in a child? Well, we got a lot of parents here, all right? Future parents and parents. Okay? How could this attitude of superiority develop in a child? And that's all on us as parents. Gil?
Parents don't treat the kids equally, and they have a favorite, then they'll treat them better than the rest. Than the kids.
A favorite. Okay, give me a Bible here.
Joseph.
Okay, you got Joseph.
Joseph, he thought pretty highly of stuff. The impact was on his brothers mostly, though, wasn't it? Joseph was a little naive at times, but the impact was mostly on his brothers, and they hated him because they thought that he was continually that way. So yeah, we got that. So of course, how about Jacob? Was there a problem in that family with a little bit of favoritism, and as a result, gave the 2 children a little bit of a different perspective on things? Ken?
Superiority develops in a child when he sees that attitude in his parents.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So let's throw them up there.
Lack of discipline from the parents to the child leads to spoiled child. All right. We got Absalom's a good example of that. And bad role models. Go to the kings of Israel. You want some bad role models? Man, there's one after another as they roll down the line. The Bible's got lots of different things. Go ahead, Jesse.
The worst for them, though, is when you start doing the we're better than them,
Oh.
whoever the them are.
Oh, man.
It doesn't even matter. And they don't have to see it. They can simply just be told it. You know what I mean? There's a lot of that.
Just take the,
Whatever word you want to use and put ism after it. And you can just roll down the line with this one, that we're better than them and all of that. And that's all on the parents. All of those isms go away in one generation if the parents would just behave. But unfortunately, before they were parents, their parents hit them with the same stuff, and now so and on it goes. Shannon?
Or continuing to instill in an almost 9-year-old and 6-year-old, taking turns type things, childlike. And then your 6-year-old talks about road rules and taking turns, other drivers, and we're like,
oops.
yeah, honey, we do need to take turns like mom and dad do.
Yeah, ever had it.
You're taking your granddaughter, grandson, child, or whatever for a drive, and you see them peeking over at your speedometer. Y'all caught, right? Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of hypocrisy going on there from time to time. And this gets back to what Norm was talking about. With God, there is no degree of it. There's lots of excuses, but how happy is God with the excuse? Yeah, not too happy. Yeah. So, okay. So, what else does pride do? It causes one to become a braggart. How does a proud person view other people? Norm?
It goes two ways. This kind of bounces off the last one. A, they're either superior to, or even if they are equal, the braggart comes in as they just start striving themselves to elevate themselves. And they might think themselves, oh, I'm just like you, except all these other things I've done. Okay. And then they may not look down on the other person, but they certainly want to elevate themselves over.
Yeah. The author had another question in there on this. Was how do people full of sinful pride reveal their hearts? There's always a reveal here associated with it, and we've talked about this already. Words and actions, fruit that's out there. And Matthew 12:34, we see that. Was that Matthew 12:34 or was that Mark 12? Got me thinking now. Anyway, a good man out of the good treasure of his heart brings forth good things. Evil man out of the evil treasure of his heart brings forth evil things. So it's again, we're back to the treasure hunt. Follow the money. Follow the treasure. And again, we will never see that kind of thing ourselves unless something happens to us where we get a knock on the head and all of a sudden we get, oh, where am I? Oh, yeah. But this is for you and me, for our friends, for our brothers and sisters in Christ, for our kids, for our family. Our responsibility as friends, as family, is to do this for our friends. And be a friend as a result of doing that kind of thing. Sam?
35.
What's that?
12:35.
12:35.
The good man brings out of his good treasure what is good, and the evil man brings out of his evil treasure what is evil.
Yes.
So yeah, they get to pick. They pick the stuff. Yeah, exactly. All right. So this is important for us to remember. Pride cuts so many different ways, and this is as much a lesson for us as mentors for those that we love as it is for us for ourselves. Shirley?
As parents, I think it's important to brag on your children, but you don't want to go to the excess that they think that they are superior to their other.
That's a Southern term,
Bragging on somebody. And, that has a different meaning than in New York. New Yorkers are loud, but they have the same feeling for their kids. They just express it in a different way. Clarissa?
Braggart. I mean, we can do this without really realizing that you're being a braggart, which is a weird word, but it's not. You walk up to people, I did this, I can do this, because you don't, unless you're really narcissistic, you don't necessarily do that. But you can if someone's telling you something, just be like, oh yeah, I did that too last year. Or instead of just like listening to someone and saying, well, that's a great job, I'm proud of you, you kind of want to one-up it, or I've done that too, I did that like 2 years ago, or something like that.
Yeah.
And so we all can do that where, again, that's kind of putting the focus back on you instead of listening to the other. And that's something you obviously need to instill in your kids. And obviously when good things, like Michelle was saying, when good things happen to your kids, they're chosen for something. It's exciting and you're happy and you're proud for them, and they're happy and proud. But then I always follow it up with, just keep that humble heart, be that good friend, always still, don't get the big head kind of a thing. So
it's something it's so sneaky. It can sneak up on you so easily. And because, again, you love your children, you love your friends, you love them, you have that close attachment to them, and so you want to shower, like God does, shower the
Blessings, on there, but you can shower them and drown them, in those things, and just turn them into a monster. So you don't want to do that. You don't want to do that. And again, we can help each other out with that particular thing. So what another thing of what pride does, causes one to become self-willed. How bad is this assault by pride on a person's character? Well, if you look at Titus 1:7, one of the places where you go for qualifications for an elder or an overseer, you can see right at the front of the list there is not being self-willed. So the question is, why is this on the elders list of qualifications? Why would that be up there? And what sins can result from this character defect, which is why it's on the list? Give me one, Shirley, right there.
Well, some people think their way's the best way or there's no way.
Your way, the highway, my way, yeah, exactly. So that causes a problem if you're going to work together with somebody, right? Do elders have to work with anybody? Yeah, there's an elder who's part of an eldership, which means just naturally you just have to work with the other elders at a minimum. That's as a starting place, and then their job is not to come down with kingly degrees on things. It's to work with the family. They're the head of the family that's here. So yeah, all of these things. There's all kinds of stuff that the foot and mouth disease is the one that we have to really watch a lot of times, because we try to not say it, and then we say it, and then it just causes there's all kinds of problems. So yeah, this is a big one as far as qualifications. All right. So what pride does prevents conversion. How can pride hinder a person from being converted? And is there a solution to that? Okay, so we're back to the humility part, which is part of the character, which God requires that, doesn't he? I mean, that's just part of the deal. Jesse?
To me, it is all best resolved in Philippians 2. Because you started out with a person that esteems themselves better than others, and he tells you to do the exact opposite there, to esteem others better than yourself. Because again, you may have your great strength, and it really may be a good one, and a necessary one even. But that doesn't diminish somebody else's.
Right.
You may be the fastest runner in the world, but maybe not the fastest swimmer. This depends on where you are. But I just think that's the best, because it gives Christ as the example.
So it's not at the expense of somebody else. It's actually working together with somebody else that the idea is there. And again, we're back to the idea of equality. Can can you try to be more humble than somebody else? And be successful? And then what would the result of that be? Now you're proud of being more humble than somebody else. Ben Franklin had that as part of his thing. One of the things that Ben did when he was, I know this because I'm from Philadelphia, he had a diary that he kept, and he had a list of things that character traits that he wanted to have as part of his life. And every time he would do something that was good, he would, or bad, he would mark it down in his book. And he said he got a hold of everything except for humility. It was the only thing that he never was able to really get his arms around. And it was because every time he thought that he was humble, he'd get prideful about it, and then he'd have to start over again and everything. So it is one of those things that's, folks that walk a tightrope, when you look at them, it looks like they're not even moving, from when you're down here and they're way up there, and it's just easy as could be. But you get a close-up of their feet and their arms and things, and you notice thousands of little micro movements that are going on that are adjusting the balance as he walks along that tightrope. And that's the system that God has given us to be able to maintain an equality. It's, how many times in life are you going to be right on target? But you should be aiming for the target all your life. And so those are things that we want to think about. And of course, the humility, we talked about it much right there. So a couple more of these. What pride does, it prevents confession of sins, certainly. And the idea of the blame game, and we talked earlier, is God interested in excuses? Not really. So, we've got to make it so that it's possible and easy for somebody to be able to come to us wanting forgiveness and be an open channel for that. And to be able to do that, sometimes we have to swallow our pride. Maybe we had a large part in the mistake that was made. So we've got to consider all those factors as we look at it. And the last thing I think that pride does, prevents service to others. And how does it do that? How does it do that? How does pride prevent us from serving others? And Jesus gave us an example of this we talked about the last few weeks.
In Romans 12:10 it says, be devoted to one another, giving preference to one another in honor. So pride does not allow you to give preference to other people nor to honor them. You're turning that honor towards yourself.
Okay, very good.
Very good. And of course there are many, many different, when we talk about, and Sam brought this up earlier, that pride is the precursor for destruction. It really is, and there are so many examples in the Bible of this that this is just a very, 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 very short list. But this one right here is probably the most important reason for us to pay special attention to this particular topic. And I want to leave us with this. God hates pride. Enough said. Yep. Yeah. If he hates it, we ought to hate it too. So let's give pride the boot if we can in our lives. Thank you.